Hi, well, I hope you've had a really great week. This week in our series, as we're exploring the Old Testament, we're going to be looking at the Battle of Jericho. Last week, if you're following through, you would have seen Joshua, an introduction of who Joshua is, what he stood for, and that he and his family decided to serve the Lord. Well, in the book of Joshua, we of course have lots of different accounts, a lot of stories we could look at, and today we're looking at the Battle of Jericho. If you haven't done so already, head over to truewaykids.com. There will be able to download this week's lesson printed off. It'll make it much easier for you to follow along. Also, if you missed last week as we looked at Joshua together, you can download that at the same time. So on the front cover of this week's lesson, I've just made a simple picture again of Joshua, the priest blowing the horns, then Rahab there in the window with her red coat, which she later showed. So Battle of Jericho is something which kids will love. It's really a story which they engage in. So you'll have a great time. There's so much that we can teach through there. But part of what we're going to look at is look at Rahab and the Battle of Jericho itself. So we're looking through Joshua right through to chapter 6, really. And one of the first points that we put, first again in the guide here, some of the points to teach it and how you can do it. God can change people's lives. Now as we meet Rahab, we see somebody who was far from God. Now, you're probably not going to want to explain to your child under 5 what a prostitute is. But you can simply explain that she was a woman who didn't serve God, didn't love God, or a woman who did bad things. But when she heard about the things that God done, she decided to put her trust and faith in him. So tell the account of how Joshua sent the spies, and as the king looked for Rahab, hid them, and the result set her free. But that result of her faith in God saved both her and her family. Then we can see that no matter what we've done, God can forgive us when we repent. See, she did bad things, but she repented and God forgave her. Then we can talk about how we need to obey God no matter what, even when it doesn't make sense to us. Ask your child how they think they could break into a castle, conquer a castle. They'll come up with lots of different ideas, but probably not marching around and making a loud noise. Because sometimes God asks us to do things that doesn't make sense to us, but it's in that he gives us the victory. It's another point we need to teach. And fourthly, it's placing God's family for us. See, we can teach our child that they can become part of God's family. So Rahab, we've seen that she was living in the wrong place, doing the wrong things, and yet God made place in his family for her. Last week in the Joshua lesson, again, if you missed it, I encourage you to go back and do it. We made a family tree together of our own families. Well, that fits perfect into this week's lesson because you can show it again. Go, remember how we looked at our family and traced it back? Well, this woman who had done bad things, who wasn't living for God before she knew God, but yet she was part of King David, who we'll look at a couple of weeks, family. But far later, if you look at Matthew, actually she became part of Jesus' family tree. So it's really important for us to teach our children. They can be placing God's family for them. There's lots of other examples here of how you can teach them these points to your child. Then as we carry on for a lesson, the first 2 pages, I've just done the printable story again with some graphics. So there's Jericho, there's Rahab helping them to escape. The priests as they going into blowing the trumpet, walk around, and then there as the walls come tumbling down. Again, I've tried to write in a way which is simple for children to understand with some pictures, just illustrate that point. So, games and activities for this week. Now, there's so many things that we can do for looking at the Battle of Jericho. One of the things I think would really be great if you could do it this week, if you live nearby a castle. Here in the UK, we have castles really everywhere, so it's easy for us to do. Maybe elsewhere in the world, it could be a bit more difficult. But visit a castle, visit a walled city, so your child can picture the scene. You could even read through the story together while you're there. But another way to do it is to act out the story. So I'm sure you've got some building blocks around your home somewhere. Build a big tower or a castle or a house somewhere. Place it on a table or in the middle of a room, and then walk around it. So walk around it once, sit down, walk around it again, sit down. You can count out the days, 1 day, 2 days. And then 7th day, walk around the 7th time. Now when you shout, make a noise, you and your child can make as much noise and let your child break down that tower or knock it over. Another way is loud music. Now, if your child is anything like mine, they love making a lot of noise, probably much more than our neighbours like to listen to it. So be sensible with it. But look for some musical instruments you have around your house. If you don't have any, just use pots and pans, or you can use a plastic bucket and beat on it like a drum. Just Google homemade music instruments for kids and you'll come up with some ideas. And what you can do is count. And on the go, you have to make as much noise as you can. It just reaffirms how the people outside Jericho made a big noise. And then finally, a nice game to play is Hide the Spy. So find a cuddly toy or a little action figure, wherever you got, and this can be a spy in Jericho. So take it in turns with your child or with your children to hide it somewhere in a room or even in your house. So one person closes their eyes, the other person hides it, and then they must find the spy. That's just some ideas for this week. There's more there as well in the lesson guide. So we come into the worksheets. We have a few. The first one is this is a maze game with the ropes coming from Rahab's window. The child must colour it in red. Remember, she was told with the red rope there. So she must colour in red and see which one is the one that goes to her window. So next one is marching around the city 7 times. I put 1 to get you started, but you need to draw around the castle, around the city of Jericho. 1, join to number 2, drive, go around again. Number 3, draw around again. Number 4, 5, 6, and then until they reach number 7. It will hopefully teach some counting as well as pen or pencil skills. Then again, 7 is a big thing. 7 priests, 7 horns, 7 days. Walk around this 7 times. So help your child to count to 7 a few times. Then I have a worksheet on the number 7. So you can ask them to count to 7 horns. Then there's just dot to draw the number 7. Here's some more practice of writing number 7. And there is colour 7 circles. So they need to count out how many there is and only colour in 7 of them. So the craft this week has to be something we make a noise. So that's the horn craft here. And all you need to do is head over. If you've downloaded already, you'll have it, but I recommend you copy this one onto card. It will make it easier for you to print this template on the card. Just colour it in, cut it out. All the instructions are here as shown. What you'll end up then is something like this or like this. What you'll want to do is, this is quite an important point, is to tape the bottom twice. So tape it before you assemble it together and tape it again when it's finished. Otherwise it'll get soggy as your child's blowing into the bottom. So tape around it, it'll make it waterproof so your child can blow into it much better. Just make sure that your child has no allergies to the sticky tape first. Yesterday, as we made it, Timothy really loved to go around and making the noise everywhere, and I'm sure your child will really enjoy it. And it's surprising how much noise actually this can make. Again, further down on the website of the post of this week's lesson, there's also a video showing how to make this craft in more detail. So a couple of coloring pages again in this week's lesson. I put the first one there of Rahab in the window with the rope where the spies could escape. There's another nice easy one here, just of the priest blowing the shofar or the ram's horn. There's one of a castle, nice and simple one. Again, your child can colour in whichever way they choose. And that's the most part of a lesson. At the end we have the worship time and the prayer time. Of course, as we look into the Battle of Jericho, we need to sing together. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho and the walls came tumbling down. This song has been in our head all week. We've been singing it everywhere we go. Once it's there, it kind of just sticks there. So, Battle of Jericho, make a joyful noise. It's again a great song for kids to sing. They really love it. And I am in the Lord's army, you know, as they walked around in the army. So we are in God's army. Some prayers, we can pray together, thanking God. He forgives people, he changes lives as he did with Rahab, and ask him to thank him that nothing's impossible for him, that even though the walls were big, it seemed impossible, God made a way for them to come down, and ask him to trust and obey him no matter what. Well, that's it for this week. Next week we're going to look at some of the judges together, starting off with Deborah. As always, I love to hear your comments. If you have any questions, send us a message. Also, if you make the craft, we love to see examples of people making them, or the current pages. And we've made a section now on the post of each lesson where we display some of your work. So if you do make this week's craft and you want to send it in, we'd love to see it. Well, have a really great week. I hope you really enjoy studying this passage together, that God really speaks to you and your family as you explore His Word and enjoy Him together. And I'll see you next week. Have a great week.